Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's live. This is going to be the last one for 2024, and it's going to be a most interesting conversation. I've been looking forward to having a conversation with this man for a while. So I'm happy he agreed to sit and chat with me before the end of the year, especially because there are a lot of us who are talking about either leaving the country or applying for a remote job or things that are beyond the confines of Ghana. So I'm confident that this kind of conversation will be insightful for all of us. So hopefully you can please have anyone you know who should be listening to this conversation, share it with them for them to join. If you can repost as well so that we have as many people listening in as possible, because I don't know when next he will agree to sit with me again. He's a very busy man. So let's milk everything that we can while we have him. So, ladies and gents, just please repost, reshare, and we will be going through this as conversationally as possible. So, if you have any questions, you can pop them up um, as we go along. But towards the end of the conversation, for about the last 45 minutes, we will give room for questions from the audience. So feel free to drop anything, feel free to react, use your reaction buttons, leave comments and questions so that we can get a full experience as much as possible. Gabriel, once again, good evening. Thank you so much for doing this. Wait, is it evening where you are? I'm not even sure.
Yeah, good evening is fine. Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you could please tell us your name
hmm
and why, what your journey has been like, and why you think I invited you to talk to us today.
I don't know why you picked me for this, but that's that's for you to tell us. So, hey, it's a privilege to be here and to be having this conversation. It is Christmas; it's the season of giving, so I think it's the right time to share my journey and also any nuggets that I have with everyone. So I'm pleased to be here. About my journey, I think it starts from passion, right? When I was young, I always wanted to do something in the public domain, whether as I did a lot of things. I used to lead our little group in church, the musical kind of group. I also did DJing or radio presenting when I was back on campus from the age of 16 till I was till the end of my uni days, so till 22 as well. So it's always been a passion. However, um, I majored in land economy at Ken University for my first degree, and after that, I worked in the UK for a bit, um, various jobs, customer relations. Came back to Ghana, working in customer relations, leading that for an IT firm in Ghana, and also government relations. It wasn't a major ambition to get into corporate affairs until I joined one of the biggest plastic manufacturing firms across West Africa. I'm sure many of you know them, Moinani Group. So I was interviewing to be the group head of customer relations. While when through the interview, and then the role of corporate affairs came up, which is basically around managing government relations. At the time, there was a big issue around plastic regulations. That was a conversation that was live. I jumped into that opportunity because it's always been a passion. And what I did some courses around communication and I also pursued international relations, which kind of helped me understand the dynamics of public policy. Um, and I worked for them for a couple of years before joining Unilever. That was a pivotal moment between joining Unilever and Moinani Group, and I'll talk about that later in the conversation. So I did that, and joining Unilever was great. It honed my skills, especially in sustainability space, because Unilever's I was a global leader when it comes to corporate sustainability. And at the time, that was when Paul Pullman was at Unilever, and the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan was their go to corporate sustainability strategy globally. So I learned a lot at Unilever, which then led me to join Diageo. and that's where the whole journey of working in Ghana, across Africa, Southeast Asia, and in North America. So basically, in a nutshell, that's my journey. Happy to take questions on any piece of what I just shared.
So those are some very impressive names on your CV, and I see why. Well, I'll be honest. That's the big part of why I had you join us. So the very first time I encountered you was
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram, and
Okay.
I noticed from your Instagram page that you travel a lot, and I thought to myself, who is this person and what does he do? What do I have to do to also tour the world like he does? So that's what made me connect with you in the first place. And then I
Mm-hmm.
noticed, oh, he's a big man who does big things across the world, which is why he can afford to go to various places. So
Mm-hmm.
hearing you talk us through this has been quite interesting. Um, do you think that there were any key decisions that you made that made you transition into a global role because you were here in Ghana and now you are solving problems all across the world?
Mm-hmm. I think it's so first, I didn't have the opportunity to listen to anybody like this talk about their journey all the way to global. So I had to go through the whole experience by myself. And I'll share a few points here. So first, I think it was about my ambition to work in a global role because at the time I've seen some Ghanaians transition into global roles. I had a friend that went to Germany to work for I think it's plastic manufacturing firm. I've forgotten the name. And I've seen a couple of other guys moving out of Ghana. So it was my ambition to work in a global role. But what's important here is to be I was open about it and I shared that with my leader. So if you want to get into a global role, if that is your ambition and you're working in any organization that has a global footprint, it's important for you to share that with your leader. Any great leader will listen to that. That was the first one. Second one was networking. So while I had ambition of going to global roles, I did not see any role models as in Africans in that kind of role, right, across the world. So I had to speak to quite a number of colleagues in different parts of the world to understand what roles do they think I'll be a good fit for, and that really opened my perspective on, oh, these are roles that you can come into, right? Because we're here in Africa and we have folks from the UK, the US, working in Africa as communication leads, lead corporate affairs in Africa. Why can't a great African go to other parts of the world to lead corporate affairs as well? And speaking to colleagues and getting that vote of confidence from colleagues really helped me to kind of carve out what markets, geographies do I want to work in. So when I'm having a conversation, it's not a vague conversation that I'm having just to say, oh, I just want to work outside Africa. No, I was very specific about certain markets I want to work in, emerging markets, North America, because I've worked in the UK already. So I wanted different experiences across Africa as an example. So those were, I spoke of the first one. First one was sharing that with my boss, speaking to my colleagues and networking extensively to understand what is out there that I can get into. The third piece is really around showcasing your work, right? Being able to deliver on the work that you're given and let that connect to the global picture as how is my work impacting my organization's global ambition. And when you do these three things, I think it creates the space for you to move forward. And that's what I did.
So I hear you talking about you needed to make sure that you delivered on the work.
Hmm.
Um, do you have any tips on how to deliver on the work? Because I can imagine that for every boss and for
Hmm.
every organization, the politics, the demographics, the vision for the company, all of those
Hmm.
influence those things. How do
Hmm.
you, what would you advise that we can do to be able to key into this is what my boss wants, this is what the organization wants, and this is how
Hmm.
I can deliver on that?
Yeah. I think I'll talk about a couple of things here. One is my own philosophy, which I call um, the 50-20, the 50-20-30 rule, right, for visibility. The 50 means the 50% is deliver on your KPI. So whatever you and your boss agree at the start of the year. So I know at this time, most of you have closed out your P4Gs or your KPI goals certain already. So whatever you agree that you're going to deliver, that is your 50% of delivering that. So if you deliver everything that you guys agreed on, checked in with your boss and all of that, that's 50%, right? That's my own theory of that. Then the 20% is going over and above. So here's what we agreed. You went over and above. That's 20%. So that gives you 70%. Then this part, the 30% is being able to connect your work to the big picture and being able to talk about your work, right? We come from Ghanaians and people from minority backgrounds are told to be modest about their work. But in a corporate space, modesty does not win anything for you. You should be able to talk about your work in a compelling way, connecting your work to the big picture. So if your organization has set big global ambition and global commitments, how does your work fit into that? If there's a global, say, target for, say, savings on public policy, and you deliver, for example, 42 million in Ghana, what is the percentage of what you delivered versus the big global savings that a company wanted to make? Maybe the target was what, 100 million, and you deliver 42 million in Ghana or across Africa. You should be able to tell that story in a compelling way as, hey, guys, in Africa, we delivered 40% of the big global ambition. I'll give you an example. When I was in my Africa role, Africa was contributing 70% to Diageo's water replenishment target. And that was huge. If Africa didn't achieve the target, Diageo wouldn't meet its global commitment. And we were focused on that, and we were telling that story consistently and in a compelling way, looking at the way that all of these work that we're doing in Africa is impacting communities as well as impacting our global target as well. So you need to do the three, right? A lot of folks might be sitting in different spaces, different organizations, being upset about why they don't get the visibility. You're probably doing the 50%, which is your KPI, and not and doing the 20%, so you're getting 70, but you're not telling the story of what you're actually doing and how it connects to the big organizational picture. And that is super important. What people need to know is that senior leaders do not have the bandwidth to go through the weeds with you. What they have set a big target, and in every conversation, their attention span is very short, and they want to know how your work, your the piece of the jigsaw that you are managing, is connecting to that big global picture. To be able to tell that story, somebody can do 50% their KPI and tell the story. They get 80. You're doing your 50 and 20, which is the extra mile, and you're getting 70, and you wonder why somebody is rising and you're not.
So, just to piggyback off that, you spoke about storytelling. So,
Mhm.
how are we supposed to tell our stories? This is my favorite topic. So, please go in as much as you want to.
Yeah, yeah. First, I always say those who tell stories rule the world, right? If you can't paint your own narrative and you want somebody else to do it for you, you're in trouble. First, it's really about if you want to tell a story, right? I always go back to the whole. Everybody who knows me knows how I love that Aristotle's theory of ethos, pathos, logos, right? Which is really around ethos is to talk about yourself. What are you? Who are you in this whole jigsaw? If you're telling your story, Gabriel, I'm Ghanaian. I'm delivering this piece of work. The pathos is how your work connects to that audience, which we need to understand, right? And I spoke about leaders having short attention span in big meetings, and you telling that story. If you're telling the story you're going through, for example, you're doing a presentation and going through the weeds, you're going to present to their executive team, and you've got 50 slides. It might seem impressive to you, but they are not impressed. Leaders will be impressed with somebody that comes into the conversation with 10 slides, but is telling a powerful story of how their work is impacting multiple levers in the organization. It's impacting reputation. It's impacting sales. It's unlocking public policy. They want to talk to that person. It's giving us what the marketing guys would say brand visibility. It's helping the brands to thrive. You might be doing sustainability work, but you can connect your work to all of these levers in the organization, right? So when you're telling that story, if the marketing director is in that conversation, you're like, oh wow, I want to connect with this guy. I want to work with this guy. This guy sees the big picture. Then you back it up with facts and data and all of that. That is what you've done. But the how of what you did and everything can be in the back pocket. That can be in the appendix. Not telling me your story by starting with going through the weeds and everything, you get people bored. So that is very important. And what kind of brand do you want to build for yourself? There are different types of personality in the corporate space where you want to be known as somebody that can deliver on the work. Obama said this a few times, and I believe in that as well. The MVP in any organization is a person that gets things done and not complain. So you always need to have a positive outlook. As this is my brand, you're always going to get things sorted, regardless of um, the kind of situation we're going through, whether it's a difficult situation or we are in a space where we are delivering on all our KPIs. So the brand you build for yourself is important. What I always say is if you want to be a CEO and you are a junior manager, you need to start acting like a CEO. The CEO needs to see himself in you, right? He needs to see himself in you. Truth
Isn't
is,
that going to create problems for you?
not for great leaders. For bad leaders, maybe, but for good leaders, no. I think they'll be quite excited about that. But the other thing that you need to know is, in each team, the leader knows the one that can replace him. Every leader knows if you've got a team of 10 people, every leader knows who's going to take my role. They know. And how are they going to know? They're not just going to judge based on the work that you did, that you packed it, that you're not talking about it, but they're going to judge based on how you bring your work to life and how you connect the dots. People who can connect the dots are the MVPs in any organization. If you can't connect the dots, a lot of people are not happy in the work that you do because they feel that you're giving so much, but yet they're not recognized, right? But I agree with you. The leader factor is also important. If you don't have a great leader, um, I'm sorry, you're in trouble, and that's going to be a tough ride for you. Yeah, and I've been in those situations as well. So yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
So, you're talking about how sustainability can be connected to things like brand visibility and how you
Hmm.
can use that to tell a story of the impact of your work.
Hmm.
But 10 years ago, sustainability, ESG, they were not a big thing. And people
Hmm.
were more on CSR and things like that.
Hmm.
So, how are you able to identify and seize these kind of opportunities that have moved you?
Hmm. I think so. Not just to focus on that. I think the impact of your question is how do you identify opportunities that kind of highlights that you're a great talent? That's what you mean, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example when I was at Unilever. When I joined Unilever from a United Group, the Unilever corporate um, affairs lead head of Unilever, the role is heavy on communications, right? Heavy on communications and sustainability. Um, in order for me to have moved to Diageo, I had to activate my public policy visibility. I had to lead something across industry that's tangible that I can show that, hey, here's what I can do on public policy, right? And it's for you to do the research. A lot of the work is for you to do the research to see in this role that I'm in, what is the most important thing I need to focus on? Being able to cover what are the priorities in your role is super important. It didn't
Mm.
take me long for me to realize that to be the head of corporate relations in most organizations or corporate affairs, you need to be the leader of public policy. You will not be Guinness Ghana's corporate relation director if you've not built your acumen on public policy. You might be a fantastic communications person, you might be a fantastic sustainability person, but it's public policy that wins the day, because public policy, there are some tangible wins for you that directly impacts the business. So when I was at Unilever, I quickly identified that I need to lean into public policy, which when I joined Unilever was finance folks doing it. Finance folks focusing on tax, focusing on regulatory issues, but I leaned into it heavily when there, I think it was 2015, when there was that flood in Accra and some folks got burnt. May their souls rest in peace. There was a government proposed a ban on plastics, right? And that had a clear impact on Unilever's ability to sell and produce in plastics. I leaned into it heavily. Most corporate affairs leaders across Unilever in Africa were still doing their comms thing. I leaned into it heavily. So when I was interviewing for the Diageo role, it was an issue that Diageo was also grappling to understand as well. So my leadership on that issue um, pre- pretty much kind of unlocked the opportunity for me to join Diageo. So you need to identify what is the most important subject or most important role in the function that I'm in. What do I need to do to get the visibility and the ears of senior executives in any role that you're in?
Yeah. So I already know that you're dropping gems, but I love the fact that the comment section is agreeing with me. So
Uh-huh.
thank you so much for everything you're sharing.
Mhm.
I know that there are people who wish they had this before they started plotting out their careers, but thankfully we are getting ours now, so we'll be able to get ours
Mhm.
strategically. Um,
Mhm.
so let's talk a little about your wins. You've spoken about extensively about your work. You've spoken about your work across four different industries, four different continents,
Mhm.
multiple industries. What would you
Mhm.
say has been your proudest moment? Like, yeah, I'm killing it. At what point did you feel like this is it?
Yeah, I think one of the, I'll say the biggest wins for me was bringing corporates together to form the Africa Plastics Recycling Alliance, which was um, the work that I started in Unilever. I spoke about the plastics ban in Unilever. I followed through that work and led industry to work with government. And we created what we call the Ghana GRIPE. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. Ghana Recycling Alliance by Private Enterprises in Ghana after 11 months of conversations, because you have organizations, Danone, Unilever, Diageo, Coca-Cola, we're grappling on how do we all come together and at the same time be competitors and not how do we work together as industry to work with government. It took a while. It took a lot of advocacy working with my sustainability manager at the time. We literally were going to CEO's offices to have the conversation about why did you join this coalition and we should lead it. So we were able to form this coalition in Ghana, which was the first in the world for Diageo. And when I got into the Africa role, we did the same by bringing Unilever, Coca Cola, Danone, and all of these guys together, which we launched the Africa Plastic Recycling Alliance in Kigali back in the 2019. This culminated in me and my team winning multiple awards as a market in Diageo Global. And for me, winning the second most valuable person in our function in the whole of Diageo Global. So, which was great because we did a lot of that work was world first in the whole of Diageo, and that model has been replicated across the world as well.
So I'm going to ask I think it's a little personal.
Hmm.
This, you just talking about this being the height of your achievements in your
Hmm.
global career,
Hmm.
but then you left Diageo. So is it a situation of leave while the applause is loudest, or it
But
was
then I left
just the next?
Ghana. I'm still in Diageo. I've not left
Oh,
yet.
I'm sorry.
Maybe
You
soon,
left
but not
Ghana.
yet. Yes.
So then you left Ghana. Was
Mhm.
it a difficult situation? It was just I'm I'm moving on to greener pastures. These are my career goals. It has nothing to do with, building upon what I've already done here.
Yeah. For me, I think a couple of things. So first is I'm very legacy focused. First is delivering on the work and creating an A-star team. So when I got into the role, one of my big ambitions was to create a team that is world class in delivering corporate affairs. And we truly, the time that the new roles came up, we truly had the best CR team in the whole of Africa. We were winning every award across the multiple fields of CR. So we were winning communications award. We are the first market to establish a proper LinkedIn account, and we're firing on all angles. We created a model for other markets to come on board with my team. In sustainability, working with Felix, we created the recycling alliance as well. On public policy, huge public policy wins, number one in Africa as well. And I'll tell you about where all of these guys are. Felix is now with Mastercard Foundation. Nana becomes guys currently with Africa 50 in Morocco. Asay is now public affairs director for Mars West Africa, and that's my legacy. And when I joined the team, the first thing I told the team from Unilever, when I came from Unilever, was you all should be going into big roles in 5 years. Because I'm not going to be here. I will not be in this role because I'm super ambitious, right? And I remember telling a colleague that I met who wanted my role, who was not happy that I joined, and you're going to face this in any new role, in any big position. But with folks there who are not happy that you joined and all of that. And I told the person that don't worry about me. I'll be out of here in 3 years. I didn't know my next role, but I was super ambitious. I was like, I'm going to be out of here in 3 years. If you work with me and we partner up, you can take this role. If you don't work with me and we don't partner, I might leave the role and you don't get the role. So that was the legacy I wanted to create, and I was able to create it, and I move on to something bigger. So, yeah.
So based on what you just said, what would you say is the way to build up your team? Because again, apart from you traveling, one of the things that made me notice you was a lot of the people who worked with you kept paying some sort of homage to all the effort you've put into building up their careers and setting them up for success. So how do you do that? Because I know it's managing a team is a lot of work, and it has very little to do with your KPI. So how do you do
Yeah.
that?
I think for my team, for me, if my team is the reason why I put my energy into my team is if my team is doing well, if each member of my team is delivering on their work and getting the visibility they deserve, it means that I have an A-star team. I'm not going to be stressing, chasing people around to do the work that you're supposed to do. So what I do with my team is first, and I think that's any leader's role, right? First, establishing clarity of strategy. So any team that I work in, before, say, if you work with a calendar year, January to December, by August, we should know clearly what we're doing the following year. So setting a strategy with clarity so everybody knows what you're supposed to deliver. That is number one. Number two is really investing in their own development as well. So I have conversation with my team around what do you want to do next? How can I help you grow in your career? Right? You have your personal life and you also have your work that you're supposed to deliver. But I know those two things has to be merged. So we have consistent conversations around how they can progress in their career, how they can go into bigger roles. And I work with my team constantly on that. Anyone that I've worked with will tell you that I'm all about people moving into big roles and taking bigger opportunities. I also believe in people having so everyone that I've hired to work with, I don't look for technical expertise only. I look at that, but I also look at do they have passion to grow, right? Because if people do not have a growth mindset to be able to grow, then they are not passionate about the job. They are not ready to deliver on the job. They are not ready to work with me for big wins and all of that. And I put my heart into that. I wish our leaders. I worked with leaders that were great like that, who are focused on my development and also focused on help me deliver on the job. But not all leaders want to do that. Most some leaders are all about themselves and how you make them look good, but not rather looking out for you. So that's probably why my team pays homage to me because they've moved into better roles. If they were still stagnant and doing the same thing, I doubt you probably follow me. Nobody would be talking about anything about me. Yeah.
All right. So I see a few comments. Because I'm trying to encourage this to be as interactive as possible, I'll acknowledge them. Benedict,
Hmm.
yes, this is being recorded. Um, it will be on LinkedIn, and hopefully, if Gabriel agrees, I can upload it on YouTube as well, so that you can go back
Yeah, sure.
and replay.
Sure.
Just
Hmm.
so that all the goodness we're getting from here, we don't have to pay a consultation to rehear. Um, Michael, yes, we are going to talk about the mistakes and the lessons. So that's
Hmm.
definitely coming up later in the conversation.
Hmm.
Abner wants to know what's in the water at Unilever because it seems to be used to create leaders. So it looks like she's encountered a lot of leaders from Unilever. Um, Perhaps Gabriel will be able to tell us something in maybe it's the HR person being able to spot really good
Yeah,
talent. Mhm.
yeah. I think Unilever is one of, as an early career, whether you're early career or mid career, Unilever is one of the best places to learn. They have such a great system of work and training framework that helps everyone, regardless of the function that you're in. You can't be in Unilever and not grow. So for me, as I stated earlier on, building my sustainability acumen was basically learning on the job in Unilever. And there are such great leaders at Unilever that can help you grow if you put your mind to it. Most organizations within the FMCG space or CPG space, packaging school space, always look out for Unilever talents because they always come in very knowledgeable, very ready, and always deliver. So that's why Unilever has done so well so far.
Right. Okay. So, my next question is, when did you realize that your career had truly gone global?
I think taking the head of society role in Africa, um, that was when I realized I'm moving out of working in local context, but now working in shaping global policy across the whole continent, working across 13 markets, working with governments on policy for regulatory affairs, and also working with NGO partners, water aid, and a few others across all of Africa to deliver our partnerships. And here, it was that moment that I realized that I'm shaping a global narrative, not just a local narrative in Ghana or just in one country. Yeah.
Hmm,
Mhm.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, you've spoken about managing 13 African markets. Obviously, you had a lot of experience here in Ghana. You had contacts here in Ghana. It wasn't the same thing for the other markets. How did you navigate that? Because I'm
I
sure
think
there's press, there's government, there are all sorts of stakeholders that you need to work with, but you don't know all of them. How did you overcome that?
first I lead into the people in the markets, and that is something that the humility to learn from those who are already working in the markets because they understand the market better. They understand the
Mhm.
confluence of business and culture, um, and the way of building relationships in those markets. And I had to lean into the team in the markets to be able to cut through, to be able to work with the other partners in the market. So leaning into the market teams is super important, and not coming in as this guy who's got the magic wand, who knows everything, who's coming in here to save everyone. You're not the savior. You're just there to help people um, deliver on their work, and also building a good relationship with the team and with the other stakeholders, which is within the company, outside of the company, so that they can actually come directly to you to engage on opportunities and solve issues together was also critical as well.
Mhm. Okay. So my last question about your wins.
Mhm.
What kinds of unique skills and experiences do you think you have gained from doing this globally oriented work?
I think for me is The first one is really understanding how politics works globally, because in each market is very different. Cross cultural communication, leadership is also super important. And I give an example. When I was moving to Singapore, I read about Southeast Asian culture in various books before I went to Singapore. These books mostly were written by people in the Western world on their view of Singapore. When I got to Singapore, within the first week, the consultant who came to deliver the cross cultural training was an American. And that was probably one of the worst experiences ever. He was saying a lot of things. Most of it was derogatory around the culture in Southeast Asia. And right after that, the leader of the region said, we shouldn't use this guy again. We shouldn't engage him again because such derogatory perspective of one's culture shouldn't be allowed. And most of the books I read before going to Singapore was similar to what the guy was saying, which was not the truth. I had to spend time to engage the people to really understand the way of building relationships in Southeast Asia, across Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and many others. And having the time and being in the market, working with these people really has enlightened my perspective on working with diverse cultures, same as North America, which is vastly different. The ways of working and engagement vastly different from working in Africa or working in Southeast Asia and working in Europe as well. So that's number two. The way businesses run in these markets is also different. And I'll talk about that in the way that you tell stories. The way you tell stories in North America, sustainability stories, is very different from the way that you tell the same story in Africa or in Southeast Asia. Um, there, what is important to governors and legislators in North America is different from what is important to community leaders in Africa. So how
Mm,
you first, that's why understanding of the culture is very important. You need to understand what matters to the people before you can tell stories that touches the hearts of people. Yeah.
mm. So storytelling is key, guys. If you haven't gotten that at any point, storytelling is essential to get a job, to get a global role like Gabriel has, to even communicate the impact of your work. So please engage in storytelling in 2025. That's your key takeaway. So let's talk about the difficulties because I can imagine that you've had to deal with things like cultural barriers, perhaps racism, perhaps even all sorts of unspoken barriers, maybe even language barriers. You get somewhere, you don't fully understand the role, maybe you say
Mhm.
something that means something else in an inside joke. How did
Mhm.
you navigate all of that? Because even Google Translate may not always be
Yeah.
accurate. How did you deal with all of those struggles?
No, that's right. So you're right. If you're going to take a global role, you have to be ready for the struggles as well. You have to be ready for people trying to understand you. So going to Singapore as an example, I was the only black person in the whole of Southeast Asia in Diageo. There was none. Okay. Um, so coming into a role and also a communications role, which is public facing,
Very
which
visible.
gives you visibility, right? It's very difficult. And most of my colleagues in Singapore had never worked with a black person before. You're the first one. So how do they come to you? So there's an issue of trust. Who is this guy? How are we going to trust him? We don't care about him. What's his style of leadership? I just imported my style of leadership from Africa to Singapore. For the first 2 months, it didn't work. Right? They were like, "Who's this guy?" you know. It took me time to learn and understand how they view leadership, and the leader has to be knowledgeable to lead, not just come in and want to share and want to get people to feed in, but you need to lead the park and get everybody to build on board. It took me a while to realize that nobody told me that, and I had to learn that. It was difficult because then you have colleagues really not following your lead, which is a tough one, which you need to deal with. You move to a market where people do not even understand your accent. So they are like, who is this guy? Accent is an issue. In developed countries, in North America, and all of that, you have a different accent. So people, if you have an accent, people who are not exposed are automatically going to think you're not smart, right? Because you have an accent. It takes them time to build trust. So building trust is a huge thing for you to navigate that and lead with clarity and purpose. So that was a big one for me. Learning the culture too was big. I think it will be harder for people who are not open, or I'll say people who've not traveled a lot, because culture in Southeast Asia and Ghana, Africa is very different, right? And you have to adapt and adapt rapidly in order to be able to deliver on that. So learning the culture is also super hard as well, and it takes time and patience. But I think what helped me was patience to be able to get into the groove, feel settled, and work with the team. If you are relocating also with even the fact the whole logistical piece of it is hard as well. Packing your things from one country, moving to the other country, the logistical challenges. People think it's a walk in the park to just move from one country to the other. Is huge. Your stuff might be on the ship for a couple of months, so you don't have everything that you need to live in that place. If you move with your kids, it's even more difficult because then you need to find school for them. You need to get them
You
into
need
extracurricular
one.
activities. It's incredibly tough. Then, while you're navigating all of that, your CEO, if you're the CEO, your president is expecting you to deliver on the numbers. There's no excuse. Day one in the country, you're delivering on the numbers. Nobody cares. So you have to be prepared for you have to be prepared for that. If you're going to make an international move, you have to be prepared for the logistical side of things, which might take you 3 months to feel settled and all your stuff coming to you. Navigating the culture and also building trust is tough. Racism exists. In some markets, it's overt or it's subtle. You have to deal with it. You're not there to make everybody smile. You're not ice cream. It's a tough situation, but you just have to navigate it. Some organizations do have systems in place that deals with that. Others may not have it, and you just have to weather that storm and build credibility. I think number one thing that fights racism is performance. If you're delivering on work, you really don't care what people say, and people on the other side will still wouldn't have much on you, and will learn to respect you if you're really delivering and if you're credible. If you're a credible leader, you're gonna have that. So it is not a perfect scenario, regardless of the organization you're in, whether it's a multinational or it's a local organization you're moving to. You will deal with racism. You will deal with microaggression. Those are things that happen, but you have to be steadfast and you have to speak up. Anytime that I've dealt with racism, I've told the person in the face, "This is not acceptable." Anytime and every time, I tell the person, "That is not acceptable." And that is the way that I was able to manage it. Because once I tell the person this is not acceptable, they know that I'm aware of what is happening. And that helps you to navigate it. But it's still going to happen. We are not in the space. It's 2024, but racism still persists.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, did these struggles affect you? Did it make you doubt whether or not you should have just stayed in Ghana and minded your own business? Is- was there a point where you thought, Charlie, maybe I should just go home? Enough is enough.
No, I never back down. That's just my personality. I never back down. When I'm focused, I'm here to deliver on work, and I'm here for this whole experience. Struggles is part of the whole journey, and I was kind of aware of that already because I've been privileged to travel across the world a bit before moving. I lived in the UK for some time, a good amount of time. Lived in Ghana, traveled around the world a bit. For example, before moving to Singapore, I've been to Singapore already, so I knew I kind of knew what was going to happen when I get there, right? Being the only black person. But you had to manage it. I'll tell you a funny story. The only black person in Southeast Asia. Then after a year, another colleague moved from Kenya to Japan. But Japan is not part of the Southeast Asia region. So it's just two black people in the whole of Asia, right? And the guy in Japan lost his laptop. I didn't know about that. So, but I'm the public facing person. I'm the one that speaks to people in employee town halls and everything. So on Friday evening, I had to check some stuff on my laptop. I opened it up, my laptop was white. So I called the head of IT who was based out in India and I said, hey, dude, laptop is white clean. What happened? It's like a fresh laptop. And he said, oh, did you report that you lost your laptop? I said, no. Then he checked and it's the guy in Kenya who's in Japan who lost his laptop. But IT folks were like, black guy losing his laptop is Gabriel. Let's just wipe it. And we don't even have the same names, right? Totally different names. His name starts with E, my name starts with G. It doesn't sound the same, but they just wiped my laptop because black guy lost his laptop. It must be this guy. Um, I started laughing. But that's you're gonna deal with a lot of those situations because you're different. You'll be walking around in malls and shops, and people will stop you, want to take a picture with you because they've never seen a black person before. I kind of expected that, and these are things that you need to deal with. I need to be ready for that.
Hmm. So you didn't miss Ghana. You didn't miss the Killy the pork.
Of course, of course, you're gonna miss it. Especially in Southeast, especially in Singapore, where there's not a lot of African professionals, or I'll say African diaspora, where you don't have African shops and all of that. Yeah, of course, you're gonna miss it. But I'm someone that gets immersed in the culture, so I was good. Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah,
As the money is also nice, so
of
there's a comfort.
course, fantastic. You need to. The money should keep you there. So yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, truly, I get that. I
Hmm.
get that. So we have a question here. It says, "Hi, Gabriel. For those who are starting out abroad or looking to join the workforce, what will you tell them to do to be the guy the companies abroad will want to hire? For instance, you are in a country and they want experience from that country. How do you navigate that?" I don't know if you can see. I've tried to
Yeah,
share the question with you. Yeah.
yeah. For people starting abroad and looking to join the workforce, tell them to do the guys. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay. I think if you start out your career, like the same things that I mentioned earlier on, it's important to talk about your ambitions as whether you're an intern or you're a new recruit in that organization to say, hey, here are the geographies I want to work in, here are the experiences I want to garner. Um, if it's a global organization, what you should know is that the global strategy doesn't change much. It will still be a global strategy, but you still need to make it locally relevant in that specific market. So if you're moving from the same organization and transferring between countries, you have to get into the country and understand what is happening in the country. But what is important is first to deliver on your job. You have to be able to show your leadership that you're somebody that gets things done. Um, People who get things done are the ones that will be moved from your own country to another country. You're not going to get the price if you're not leaving your country. Nobody will take a chance on you. Moving you from your area of comfort to another area which is unknown is only done for people that they feel that have the resilience and are also people that get things done. So delivering on your work is important, right? To make sure that people see you as this guy, if you whatever you give him, he's gonna make something great out of it. That is super important. Speaking up and talking about your ambitions and which markets you want to work in is also very important. It doesn't have to be just the country you come from. It could be you starting out in the US, in the UK, wanting to work in, say, Colombia. You can start having that conversation. You can start taking Spanish lessons. Leaders will recognize you and take you to those markets. And our focus is on Black people. There are folks who come from the UK, US, who work in Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, and they are British people. They've never been to the market, but then based on the work that they've delivered in their home countries, the organization believe that they can come into the market and deliver as well. So delivering your work is number one. That's what's going to open the door for you. And number two is speaking up and talking about your ambitions.
Mm. So I have a question for you. What if the people who will, push you, I mean, maybe I'm like you, I want to
Hmm.
go and work in North America,
Hmm.
but all the senior management people that will push me also want to go and work in North America. Why would they push me or give me a certain kind of visibility for,
Yeah,
or I should befriend people in North America as well?
totally, totally. That is great.
Okay.
And I will share my own example here. There was a time in my career that I was working with a leader that wasn't supportive of my ambitions. Right? He was not in support of my ambitions in any way, shape, or form. What I did in that scenario was to network extensively within the organization. So he's the leader. He needs to make the call on, okay, Gabriel is ready for the next role. But then I'm networking with other stakeholders because what you should realize is that in any organization, the key person that makes the decision, your leader and other leaders make a decision on you. We have talent conversations, and the conversation is your leader is going to present what you did, and other leaders are going to support it, either approve it or debate it and say, well, if we think this guy is great, but other leaders will be like, no, he's not great. Um, so you need to have what I call a communal opinion of who you are, not just your boss. Your boss is
Mhm,
important, but having that communal opinion is important. You might be working in, say, in a corporate affairs team like yourself, right? You're in that team. There should be other people in the global team that are in subgroups that you can connect with. You can still get to go into a global role without your boss's blessings because there could be opportunities they know that your boss doesn't know.
mhm,
And they know the opportunities in the global team. They know about what roles are going to come up. What is the new global strategy for the next 10 years? We might be creating these specific roles in the global team, right? Your leadership sitting in Ghana will have no clue of that, especially if it's your functional strategy that the global team is thinking about. Your team will never know that. Your leaders will never know that.
mm,
And when the time comes for you, if that opportunity is there and the global team recognizes that you're a great talent, it will be hard for your local team to stop you from going to those roles. And there's an example. Other example, I know a team member who got another job, right? He's a junior rank. He got a great job outside of the organization that I was working in. And the folks in the local market were like, no, we want to keep you here, all of that. And my Africa leader was like, no, this guy is so great. I think we should give him the opportunity. Instead of us losing him, let's give him global roles. The global director for that function came like 7 levels down to speak to that guy because he was such a great talent. And in the first conversation, he told him, this is, you are the only one that I've been asked to speak to at your level. You might be doing something amazing, right? He still left the organization, but for him, because he had a better offer, he went to the other organization. He left the company to go to much better, to another company which had a better offer and greater opportunity. But he was so good that
next to the talent. Yeah.
exactly he was so good that they couldn't afford him. They couldn't afford for him to leave, and they had to call the global head of the function to go speak to the guy 7 levels below to convince him to stay. That is how visible you can become, and so powerful that Your boss will have nothing on you. But you don't have to be siloed. You don't have to be only locally focused. What you find, and I saw that in my organization, there are folks who are fantastic, brilliant in a specific market, but they're just working for the globe. They are just working for the country boss. They are just working to please the media team. Yes, you should work to ensure that you're delivering the market ambition, but you should also have a global network. You should be connected to them. They should be able to count on you to say, hey, we know this guy in this market. If you want to get stuff done, you can speak to him. That is how you need to build your visibility in an organization. It's super important. There are folks who sit in markets where, when us are working across the world, in my Africa role, you send them an email and it takes them 3 weeks to reply to you because they don't care about you. They only care about folks in their market that you're working with. It will be impossible for you to get out of your market if your focus is very siloed on your local leaders.
Hmm.
I hope that
All right.
helps.
Yes, it definitely does. People seem to agree as well. So, my next question is, so people, we're wrapping up at 8 p.m. So if you have any questions, I have a long list of questions, but
Okay.
I want to give you the opportunity. I want you to give you the opportunity to interact with him as well. So please send in your questions, and we can ask them, and Gabriel is more than happy to answer them. Maybe there's a little clarity you need. If you're too shy to put in the comment section, you can send me a DM. I'm happy to read it on your behalf to keep your anonymity. Yeah. All right. So my next question is, actually, I think we should just do the question that the gentleman asked that I said we'll come to. Did you make any mistakes that you thought slowed you down, or any bad habits that you think we should leave behind as we work towards a global career?
Yeah, I think for me, not necessarily mistakes. I think in my international moves, I should have probably immersed myself early. I was when I was moving, did my first move. There was a lot of things I had to do logistically, which kind of um, slowed the pace of delivery in the first few months. Looking back, if I had this knowledge of somebody sharing all of this with me, as you're gonna have logistical challenges, but you also need to find a way to immerse yourself in the culture as quickly as possible. I would have done that earlier on than wait for a couple of months before immersing myself in the culture. So that is one thing I'll say. Looking back, I should have done that earlier. Yeah.
Mm. Do you think that any of the setbacks that you had from all of this
Mm-hmm.
affected you in any way? Did you at any point start feeling I'm the only black person here? Are they going to look at me funny?
Mm-hmm.
Did you start questioning yourself at any point because of any of these challenges?
Yeah, totally. I think um, if you don't hit the ground running in any new role, the expectation of leaders is different. Like, oh, this guy, can he really do the job? Maybe he can do it in Africa or he can do it in England, but he can't do it here. So, in order to establish credibility immediately, um, that kind of when I got into the role, I was in that moment of what's it called, imposter syndrome. It sets in anytime you lever into you move into you level up into a new senior role, imposter syndrome is going to set in. It's normal, right? No matter how confident you are, and I think I'm a pretty confident person, but it will set in, right? You start feeling like, oh, maybe I could cut it in Africa, but this is crazy. I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. So that came in, but after doing the first time moving to North America, there was nothing like imposter syndrome because I knew what to do when I got into the role, and I was clear on how I need to manage expectations with leaders and all of that, which helped in my next move. Yeah.
Hmm. Right. I have another question here. So, in your experience leading ESG initiatives across diverse regions, what strategies would you say were most effective in engaging communities, particularly in the context of climate change and social equality? Let me just share it with you.
Yeah, I think in the ERG space, and what has not changed from the days of CSR is partnerships. It is important for you to look at what are the credible partnerships you can leverage because working for corporate organizations, you are not the expert in that thematic area. So you have to look at who are the local credible partners that you can work with in order to drive the change. So partnership is important. Community engagement and doing the community needs analysis is also super important. The organization might be focused, and I give you an example. When it comes to regenerative agriculture, if you want to affect real change on the landscape level, and you're just focused on the specific crop that your organization is probably sourcing, you might cause some change, but you need to work with multiple partners. You might have to work with the local river basin authority that is in that geographical area. You might have to work with a couple of NGOs. You might have to work with your peers who are also sourcing different type of crops within that shed in order to cause a meaningful change or an impactful change within that geographical area. So partnership is super important. Doing the needs analysis is important. These are two things that I'll call out in establishing or designing a program that is going to yield a meaningful impact.
Okay. So, I was getting to the questions about lessons, but I can see that someone has a question on how would you approach upscaling and personal development?
I think personal development, a couple of things. First is for me, you need to seek. I don't necessarily have mentors. I have kind of like a board of advisors. So seek out people who've already done it in specific fields, right? Having mentors is probably overused because one person do not have all the knowledge, right? Somebody might be good on specific subject, maybe ESG, maybe leadership, but he might not be. Some might be good on ESG, but he has no clue of what leadership is. He's such a terrible leader, but he has technical skills on ESG. So you need to scope out who are the key people that can help you, right? Because these people have experiences, they can show you the path. So having a board of advisors is important for you. A personal board of advisors is important for you to scale up. Second is also learning on your own, right? You can pick up courses that will broaden your scope of knowledge as well. Not necessarily going ahead and padding CV, padding academic titles. That is good, but that is not the way to navigate the corporate space. It's not really come to titles. It's really about your knowledge to deliver on the work, showing capacity to deliver on the work. So that is super important as well. So building your knowledge, you can take up courses. There's also a lot of knowledge online that you can learn on your own. Not just waiting for your company to say, "Hey, there's a training or learning hub. Go and partake in that training." Um, Waiting on the company or waiting on your boss to tell you what to do doesn't show a sign of a great employee. You have to learn on your own and to be able to come to the table with diverse perspectives. And that's how I learn.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know you've spoken about mentors, you've spoken about a board of directors. By the way, we are all actively recruiting you onto our board of directors. I'm sure they'll send you they'll send you DMs
How much are
at
you
the end
looking?
of the conversation. Someone wants to know, how do you go about finding mentors or advisors that align with your path and vision, especially in a global space? So, I mean, it can be product management, it can be whatever it is, but how
Mhm.
do I find those people so that
Yeah.
I can put them on that board?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think first you before you go out there looking for people, you first need to define your purpose. And that is super important for everyone. And purpose basically is where do you want to be? What is your North Star? Where do you want to be in 20 years? It might seem far, but it's not that far. Where do you want to be in 20 years? So if you look at yourself and you say, here's where I want to be in 20 years, then you start working back and say, so in 10 years, where do I want to be? 5 years, where do I want to be? What are the milestones I want to reach at each point? And once you're clear, in 10 years, you want to be, say, a CEO, or you want to be a global director of X or Y or Z, then you use that information to start looking out for scouting out. You can use LinkedIn as an example. Don't feel shy. Send a good email to an executive and talk about how you're passionate about their work. You've looked at them for quite a while. They're in that space, and you have a vision to be like them or be an expert in X and Y. And that executive might say, "Hey, they're happy to take me." It depends, and I'll give caution here. It's based on the quality of the email that you send to executive, right? I know folks will go out there and say hi. LinkedIn is not a chat platform. Say hi. Hi for what? And we get a lot of that. You get a lot of people, hi, how are you? Hey, how are you doing? No, that's not how you do it. A lot of leaders will engage with you. Let me give you the scoop here. A lot of leaders will engage with you if they see that you are participating on their post. You are active on their post. You're participating there because it shows interest. Before you even go in and send a cold email to say, hey, I've been watching your book, which is authentic. You've been participating on the post. You are there. You're commenting. You want to know more. So when you send that email, you want to learn more. Is there a time that you can have a quick chat to understand why he does, and maybe you can catch in some time? Most leaders will be open to that. But if the approach is wrong and you just go in there and you're like, first thing you're asking for is a job, um, you should know that a lot of leaders get these emails, like 40 emails of people looking for jobs every day, right? But what is important here again is you can't elevate a mentorship relationship to a sponsorship relationship where the person is now sponsoring you into roles because of how you approach the person. So you might approach the person for knowledge building. They might share some couple of nuggets with you and books to read and all of that. No, no, no. After that, when they see that you're progressing on that, you're ambitious about it and everything, there might be opportunities that they will be happy to recommend you to. There are people that I can vouch for and I'll say, hey, hire this guy, he's gonna deliver on the job because I know their work ethic, I know how they pick information, I know how they're hardworking, I know how they have a growth mindset and they are open to learning, and I believe that they will do well on the job. Not just someone that just comes into your team and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job." It's not the right approach. Yeah.
Right, right. This has been very enlightening, by the way. I don't know about anybody else, but I am learning a lot. So thank you so much for sharing all
Thank
of
you.
this. Mm, If you could go back, what would you do differently in your career path? I mean, you've spoken about taking your time to understand the cost of moving from one place to the other. But
Hmm.
beyond that, is there anything you'd have done differently to better position yourself for a global career? Let's say I'm in finance,
Hmm.
not ESG and sustainability. That's more
Hmm.
it's more trendy these days. But I'm in
Hmm.
finance, something else. What can
Hmm.
I do differently today that can position me for a global career?
I think the strategies are kind of similar. If you're in finance and regardless of what you're working at, are you a tax guy or are you the payroll guy or are you whatever? I strongly believe that regardless of what you are doing, regardless, you can even be the receptionist. If you can tell how your work impacts the bigger picture and you show ambition as to you're eager to learn more, you're eager to take on new projects, you're eager to understand the bigger picture of the organization, as in, you know when the company is making profit, you know when the company is struggling. I think the first thing everyone needs to know is how does your company make money? It's a question that a lot of people don't even know. How does your company make money? Do you understand how your company makes money? Regardless of the level that you are, if you can tell how your company makes money, it will impress every CEO. They'll be like, oh, wow, you have potential to grow, right? Regardless of where you are. So being able to have a clear understanding of the big picture is super important. If in finance, you're doing, let's say you're doing taxes, are you connecting with the global tax people in your organization as well? There could be roles that your finance director doesn't know, doesn't even have a clue of. That can move you to UK or France to go do the same piece of work you're doing in your market. And let's face it, being in CR, corporate relations, is probably one of the toughest functions or um, opportunity the rare opportunity for you to get out of your market because it's public facing, right? Communications, employee engagement, public policy is really reserved for people who are local because they speak the language, they know the people, they have the networks. So for you to move, if you can move in corporate relations to go lead an agenda in the market where you're not from, you can do it in any other function. You can do it in supply. You can do it in finance, which is the same kind of books that you're managing. You're not even managing employees. So for someone in communications to be able to move across countries and across regions, which is a rare occasion, you can do it in any other function easily.
Hmm. You
Easily.
can do it in any other function easily.
Easily.
So my last question for you today is a
Mhm.
not serious one. Which, apart from Ghana, which country has been your favorite to live in?
I think I learned a lot in Singapore. I loved Singapore, the culture, also because I made some good I'll say build some good relationships in those markets as well. And I had a great time learning about Singapore. Also because of my interest in politics and how Singapore, with a similar social structure like Ghana, um, is a truly first class country and ticks all the boxes on all the indicators for economic freedom and on every level. And if you look at Singapore and what Singapore has been able to do, for me, it's always an inspiration. So living in Singapore every day, I was inspired. It made me believe that Ghana can work. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So thank you so much. I have 16 minutes, but I don't
Hmm.
see any more questions. So
Hmm.
I know that this has been impossible to schedule, taking you away from your family and your holidays and everything to spend 1.5 hours with us. I am
Hmm.
extremely grateful that you responded to my DM. Guys, don't go and say hi in his DM and say nothing else. I went straight to the point and I said what I
Exactly.
wanted.
Exactly.
Asked him if he was available. I included a time and a date and all of that. So
Yeah.
if you do send a DM, he will respond. Just go straight to the point and say
Exactly.
what it
Hmm.
is, and he's more than happy to help. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. I do this once a month. I have
Hmm.
a live conversation. So for those of you who are joining for the first time, see you next month. Hopefully, we'll be talking about how to prepare to be a board member. Because I know that a lot of you have had questions. Okay, I've had a certain kind of career, but now I'm ready for a board role. I don't know how to pitch myself for that. What goes into the CV? So I'm looking for people who can give you responses to that as well. So hopefully, that will be the conversation we'll have next month. But we did a special. This was supposed to be a January conversation, but we did a special to end the year for you. So as you're plotting your 2025 goals, you can, based on all the insights that Gabriel has shared, put in a strategy to make sure that you are visible, that you are communicating your value, and that you are networking correctly, being able to articulate how what you're doing impacts your company. So Gabriel, this is over to you for any final words, and then we'll wrap it up.
Thank you for the opportunity. I love to share these nuggets with people because I think, for me, I didn't get the opportunity to hear anyone share their journey before I went through it myself. I don't believe the experience is the best teacher. It's not. Advice is the best, right? Experience, you go through the pain before you
Mhm.
learn. But if you have somebody to share that with you, you avoid 4 years of struggle and all of that. So, like I said earlier on, I think if you can do it in corporate first, you can do it in any function. Just don't be modest about your ambitions. You have to dream big. Don't be modest about it. Don't be modest about telling your story. We need to tell our story more. Africa needs to tell our story more. And I had this conversation with a friend today about how there's a lot of stories we have in Africa that we don't tell. How many young people know about Timbuktu, know about Mansa Musa? How many young people know about how rich our culture and the leadership structure of the Ashanti Kingdom, as an example, which impressed Westminster so much? There's a lot more about the leadership structure of the Ashanti Kingdom in Westminster literature than in Ghana. And we need to be able to tell our stories because we've got such rich heritage. And for everyone, we all have unique stories to tell, and we shouldn't be modest about it. Let's keep telling our stories.
Fantastic. So that's a great point to end on. There are a lot of thank yous in the comment section. I'm just highlighting a few to show you that we appreciate your time and your wisdom. And when we do go global, we'll meet up with you for lunch in whichever city you are in. Thank you to you. But we appreciate this so much. This has been great. Thank you again for your time, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. See you again next month. Good
All right.
night.
Thank you. Good night. Bye.